Kansas State, Colorado, in what is the premier matchup of the weekend. Joe, Colorado coming off a bye, Kansas State coming off a pretty convincing win when we last saw them as well. Your thoughts going into what is, Joe, I'm going to ask you the question, a Big 12 eliminator here to some extent?
I'm going to say no, because I really think that it's going to be a 3-loss team that wins the conference. I'm starting to feel pretty good about that coming to fruition. This game is probably one of the most ridiculous ones that we're ever going to preview this season, because they are polar opposites in so many categories. Colorado's 110th in the country with for most penalties per game with 8, while Kansas State is 28th fewest in penalties per game. Colorado's got one of the best passing offenses, 9th in the country, while Kansas State has one of the worst passing offenses in the country at 108. They've got one of the best rushing offenses in the country with 252 yards, good for 7th in the country, while Colorado is one of the worst at 125th, only averaging 80. All this game is going to come down to, Blake, and this is when I definitely don't have a pick. I kind of lean Colorado for one reason I'm going to get to in a second. It's going to come down to which strength for either of these teams, which is Kansas State running the football, Colorado throwing the football. Which one overwhelms the opposing team more? I think where the separation point is here is that Shedeur Sanders and how good he has been playing and his ability to, when things are going wrong, he has found ways to resurrect his team. And their offensive line play has been improving gradually, but it's still not great. I don't have anyone necessarily on that Kansas State defensive line that truly sparks fear in me if I'm that Colorado offensive line, but I'm sure that they're going to give up pressures. If this game is tight and it comes down to a drive, I really do think that Shedeur is going to be able to will his team back like we saw him do against Baylor and the way that he played against UCF. He has been phenomenal. I think that that's the separation point. I think that the Nebraska game has been a rallying cry for them, that they've come closer together and they've been more of a team ever since. And then the last, bit here for talking about Colorado is this game's at home for them. And I don't think Colorado gets enough credit for how raucous that stadium has been, since Deion's taken over. And I think that is going to also be a bit of a helping factor for them in this.
Look, I think you're right in this. I do think that Colorado could come into this game and be in a situation where their wide receivers and Shedeur Sanders is able to really put it on them throwing the football. But Joe, I'm more intrigued about the coaching staffs in this one, because what does Deion Sanders do coming off of a bye? What does he do? What does Kansas State do? So, listen, I think that the players on the field advantage Colorado. I think the coaching staff, however, in this game, advantage Kansas State. And we're going to find out what truly matters in this one. I told you this about Avery Johnson, too, the quarterback for Kansas State. If they get in a situation where they got to get points and Colorado is putting it on them, Joe, he's not going to be able to throw them back in the game. He was really bad against BYU throwing the football. It's just not his game, man. I think if you're Colorado, you just got to play your game. Styles make matchups. I think yours is a little bit more favorable here, Joe.
And I think one of the pieces of evidence that we can kind of point to, and this is why this game is really hard to predict, in my opinion, is that the two bad games that these teams played, what happened? Colorado against Nebraska, the game got away from them because Nebraska was more physical up front. Yep. They were able to run the football. They controlled time of possession, and they kept the ball out of Colorado's hands. Eventually, they forced some bad turnovers and whatnot. BYU's bad game, the game got away from them.
You mean Kansas State's bad game?
Sorry. Kansas State's bad game against BYU. Game got away from them. They were down too many scores, and that offense is not – it's a great rushing attack. It's one of the best rushing attacks in the country, but it just feels like it's not designed to put up points in spurts to get back into a game. That's where I come down to, and I think that if Colorado goes up by 10, that could be enough for them to just keep enough of a separation between them and Kansas State.
So it sounds like both of us might be going with Colorado here, which kind of sparks me to ask, Joe, if they're 5-1 coming out of this one, what conversations are we having about Colorado?
I mean, that they're good enough to win the Big 12, but they got to finish.
Are they a
the
playoff
season.
contender?
If they win the Big 12, they are. I stand by this. I don't think that more than one Big 12 team gets into the playoff. Like, I really don't. I think the playoff committee.
See that. But they can win the conference, man. I mean, look, if you can beat Kansas State, which, look, man, I'm sure Deion's been putting pressure on them all week in reference to this. And I know that there's a lot on the line. Now you need to show us, are you the team that everybody paints you in the media? Or are you the team that can go out in the field and win a P4 conference? Can you do that in year 2? Joe, I just think that this passing attack is gonna startle Kansas State. Like I do. They haven't seen these receivers. They haven't seen this type of quarterback. But to your point, if Kansas State can out physical them, and look, Joe, we've seen the blueprint for this game too. There's a very strong chance that Kansas State can keep the ball away from them too.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
right. There's a ton of truth to that. And that's how they win, is that they play the Nebraska style. We're going to grind things out and we're going to run the football. And
Vandium.
The way that, if the version of Kansas State where they smoked Oklahoma State comes out, I think they win pretty handedly. But the difference between Oklahoma State and Colorado, much better player at quarterback, much better players at receiver.
Right.
They can will their way back into it if they go down a few scores. And if maybe they have a bad first quarter, they're capable of dragging themselves, out of that and surviving.
Yeah, you just got to play the time possession game. You got to keep Shedeur off the field. If you can do that, Joe, I think that they can win this game. And look, I'm going to go Colorado here. I'm pretty confident in them going into this one. The only thing that scares me is if, I just don't. I think that one side does have the better staff here. That's what I'd say. All right. Anything else before we get out of here?
No. Tomorrow we got 4 more games that we'll be dropping on the channel.
Go to the YouTube channel, subscribe, notification bell. All I'm going to say is this: the Swifties are going down tonight.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.